Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Vibhuti Jha. As I always mention, at the risk of repetition, we always discuss issues here. And today we are going to talk about issues which connect us very deeply, all of us, like science, society, technology, economics, and politics. We are all connected with our roots and life with the women around us in the form of a mother, sister, daughter, or a wife, or a spouse, or a significant one. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming two very important friends of mine. One is Neha Srivastav. Neha is an IT professional and she runs a NGO. She has just established an NGO that talks about and deals with issues relating to women, especially from the Hindu point of view. So Neha, welcome to the program. And
Hi,
I
good
expect
morning.
we will have a very furious, if not a lovable dialogue on this matter.
Absolutely.
My second guest today is Hitesh Patel. Hitesh Patel runs a company called Voyager. It's a filmmaking company. Hitesh is a filmmaker and he has a film that he has on Netflix. And he has a long-term contract with Netflix to make movies for Netflix. So Hitesh, welcome to the program and let us know more about the directorial adventure that you have in filmmaking on all aspects of human life. All right?
Thank you for having me.
But I want to start off by saying that feminism is a word which is a Western word. But there is a very important word in Hindu philosophy which is called Nari Shakti. Feminism is nowhere close to Nari Shakti or the role of women in our cultural life. This is the only religion in the world where many goddesses have wonderful women role, whether it is Saraswati, Lakshmi, Durga, Kali, Mahamaya, call her by any name. They have a very important role with us in our lives to play. Therefore, it is very important that politically speaking right now, whether it's the United States or India or the rest of the world, but not so much, but especially in India and the US, the role of women is being discussed rather openly. Good, bad, and ugly, all of it happen at the same time. So how do we address the challenges that face that role, the role of a woman? How does that role define us as humans? So look at it this way, that I have a personal phrase of mine, and I'm happy to share with you, that most men make a fool of themselves about women. It's a very crazy concept that I have, and I believe in it because mightiest of men have made fool of themselves about women. And look at Jeff Bezos. He is no longer going to be the richest man on the planet Earth. Not only that, his company will not be the same perhaps, all because he fell in love with somebody outside his marriage. That's the point which is important. And how do we respect, treat women in a society that is full of inequities of its own kind? So let's begin the conversation with Neha as to what does her not-for-profit actually do and intends to do, and bring that subject matter in the conversation with the role of women as we perceive it in the world today. You are an IT professional. How did you get involved with the women's movement? And as an IT professional, you must be traveling all over the world. You are a professional. You are no different than any IT guy who is a male. So do you feel that discrimination or that kind of thing? I want to hear from you more about it.
Absolutely. So kind of beginning with, and thank you for mentioning the fact that the word for feminism in Hindu philosophy is very different. And the word Shakti is actually a lot more powerful than, say, woman or female as we understand. And therefore, I named the foundation called Shaktitva, which a crude translation in English would be the status of being Shakti, or the state of being Shakti. So and that in my opinion is the fundamental differentiating factor between the way we understand the traditional roles of men and women in the West as opposed to the way we understand it in Hindu philosophy. And to kind of, state point that is more or less not very well understood is that we are all a product of our society. We are a product of the culture we come up in. We are a product of, and the culture itself is influenced by a lot of things, part of it being the majority culture. And the dominating culture of India is very different from the dominating culture of the West. And as a person who was born and raised in India and has made US her home for the past decade almost, I've been in a unique position to view the differences. You know, what my life was when I was in India versus what my life is when I'm here now. And how that, and over time, like, you know, completely by personal experience, I've developed an understanding of what the nuanced differences are, and out of sheer interest, I kind of started looking into it academically as well. And so I realized that Hindu philosophy, specifically the concept of Shakti, has a lot to offer the world. And especially I see the dichotomy that we are stuck in terms, especially in India right now, where we, due to westernization, our understanding of feminism is torn. So when a woman, an Indian woman, a Hindu woman who's born and raised in India hears the word feminism for the first time, she immediately thinks that, oh, this is such a important topic, and it feels very natural to me. It's like, of course, feminism, yes, I want to do feminism. And you see the violence against women that is prevalent in the society, you see a bunch of other things, and you think, yes, we need to strive to be better, we need to strive to get parity, which we used to have, at least we have it in our texts, but somehow it's not here. And then when you look at the actual activist side of feminism, you get completely, you see a very different picture. So there is this, a person is torn, suddenly you're told that, wait, violence against women, we're going to talk about that later, but let's talk about your Sindhu right now, right? I think that is oppression. This is what the activists are telling people. Your thali, or the thali is the Tamil word for Mangal Sutra. So your Mangal Sutra or your thali is a symbol of oppression. Oh, Karwa Chauth is very oppressive. And suddenly she's like, this is not what I meant, I don't see these as oppressive things, and I absolutely have a very close connection to these things, so I don't completely buy in. And then you are utterly torn as to, you do want to fight for your real issues, but they're not being highlighted
You
anywhere.
have highlighted a remarkably important point here, is that the perception and concept of feminism as a Shakti in Indian women that exists, that thought itself has been demolished.
Yep.
And as you mentioned, the oppression or the dominance of the Western culture has been so prevalent that in the Indian context, we believe things Western are superior to ours.
Absolutely.
That's a very dangerous thing to happen, because in my humble opinion and at my travels around the world, what I found is that I became a better Hindu and a better Indian after coming to the United States, because of the simple fact that all the virtues that they talk about, what should be, the moral science, the freedom of religion, and whatever else is talked about, it already existed in our text and our way of life.
Absolutely.
So, talking to you, Hitesh, about it, and I want to pin on one specific aspect, is that we Hindus have been very remarkably poor in building institutions. And I admire West, grudgingly, but I applaud them for that, by setting up the standards of institutions that they have set around. So every institution in the world, think about it, they set the standard, whether it is Oscar, Golden Globe, whether it's Wimbledon tennis, 4 Grand Slams, whether it's World Cup hockey, World Cup football. You have the Grand Slam of tennis, you have Tony Awards, you have Emmy Awards, the Pulitzer Award for journalism. Every single award as an institution has been created by the West. And thus, whatever the West says about the social aspects becomes the defining moment for everybody else who is listening to the West, because they have been very dominant about it. What do you think ails the Hindu philosophy? Because you are married to an Italian Haitian lady, right? You are, Neha is married to a Tamilian. So there's a classic example of internationalism and nationalism of a different kind. Neha's children will be true Indians, Tamil and Uttar Pradesh combined. So share with us about that challenge of institution building within Hinduism and what prevents it from happening.
I think it's a great question, and thank you for having me here. And loved hearing from opening remarks. I believe that there is quite a bit of evolution that occurs between the power of script and storytelling, and then of course real life. And one of the most profound examples I can give are our ancient texts. You know, both whether the Gita or the Bible, etc. Much of humanity and our experiences are based from this, whether directly or indirectly from our parents, and then the next generation, or directly, meaning many of us read it and embrace it. So what I'm trying to get at is that institutions, and the lack thereof, are across the board, not just in, let's say, something like popular culture of, these awards, or even a broader degree, what is the beauty myth? What are the ideologies of what it means to be handsome? Or, again, in our culture, we have skin tone is a very prevalent, really a societal issue, or however you want to put it. Men, women, everyone's talked of it. So what I'm getting at is I think that the Hindu culture and Indian diaspora overall, the Desi diaspora, is quite broad. And within that, yes, there has not been this sort of formation or collective, similar to the Hispanic diaspora. There hasn't been this sort of coming together of people from all the various diversity we have both in India and now the diaspora here. The last thing I would state, though, that is for Voyager and what I focus on is plurality. I look to what Neha was saying as well but what can I do in storytelling? What can we be championing in fiction and nonfiction, but primarily new storytelling that highlights people of color, men, women from different backgrounds, at a plurality level that's more matching to the population, which is like 50% is Asian and African or Hispanic American in the country right now. Yet the media is about 8%. So there is less for people to choose from too. There's westernization happening in India, but really the case studies are probably the young kids like myself and others who grew up in America, but with very strong Desi foundation in terms of culture, family, and religion. But there's less examples. And now you look at cinema, you look at the proliferation of media, streaming. There's more shows on Amazon and Netflix and Hulu that feature people of color than there ever was.
Talking about that, you mentioned about the skin color, right? You talked about a couple of things, and I have a personal experience of that. When I came to this country in 1991, India, we have been kind of tutored to believe Gora Chamra, white skin is superior,
Right.
So we come with the same baggage. And I remember in my office in Los Angeles, fresh off the boat, I asked the question to my lady colleagues in the office, what are you going to do on the weekend? And they said, we are going to the beach, we will get tan and everything. I said, but you are already fair. Why would you go to the beach? And then one colleague said, you goddamn Indians, you have no idea what a beautiful color you have. So since then I began to say that I'm naturally tan, I'm not brown. Now, here is a very important part. India and United States have a very indelible relationship. When Columbus, the Italian, was commandeered by a Spanish king to discover India, he landed in the United States. And that was his discovery of India, calling the natives as Indians. We are still living with that kind of thing, although the vernacular has changed. But we'll revert to that topic and other issues relating to gender, feminism, Nari Shakti, and our Hindu way of life soon after these short break. Welcome back. As we talk about institution building, there is one other important aspect of that, is that this is what I have felt, and I would like to both the panelists to respond to that, is that are we Hindus really caring, aware, consciously aware that if we do not talk about ourselves, the rest of the world will not know anything about us. It is also a conceived thought of mine that you generally notice that we are denounced by the organized religion, as I call them, as idol worshippers, or we don't have any religious diktats. And I realize that Hinduism and Sanatana Dharma as we practice is the only true democratic way of life in the world. Because there are no mandates, there are no strictures, there are no instructions that you have to pray 99 times a day, or you have to go to a temple on Sunday or Saturday. It's always pronounced by the fact that you become who you are. Your karma determines your actions today, determine what you will be tomorrow. And your karma determine what you become eventually. So it's not about praying 50 times a day and then going and taking a confession and purify yourself, but your actions. To that end, I find that we Hindus have never been smart enough to propagate that thought, because we are a way of life which follows natural laws. We accept diversity, and we are based on scientific principles. So as science and technology are breaking the barriers of knowledge, as it dispels the darkness of knowledge or absence of knowledge, the religious barriers are collapsing by themselves. So Sanatana Dharma is the way of life. Perhaps tomorrow, as the science and technology moves forward, we realize that women are no longer responsible for gender determination of the child. We men are. Just as we know that thunder and lightning don't happen because gods are angry. That's the point which I'm trying to say, is that it is up to us Hindus, up to us Sanatana Dharmis, to take our words, not in the Christian proselytization sense, but as an educational platform, as an aware, conscious platform. Your thoughts on this, Hitesh?
Well, I would totally agree that, it's, I come back to what I'm a self-professed expert in, or at least a skilled person at times, which is filmmaking and storytelling. So for me, it becomes about understanding and looking as much into the richness and depth of the Hindu scripts and the culture, the learnings from it that are passed down from families. And I believe that there is so much more to the next generation because of technology as well. Think of just simple things such as hymns and songs, Gayatri Mass
Shlokas
songs.
for that matter, mantras
Sure.
for that matter, yeah.
And now there are apps that allow one, like my mother, who's in Massachusetts, to immediately consume and be part of her faith and love and God, all because of her phone being able to allow, and this app allowing these wonderful songs to come about, which we all know would not have occurred years ago. So maybe one, with her determination, would have, as many of us, go and buy a record or a tape player and do it, but maybe not. But now it's so much more accessible. So one thing is undeniable. The depth of which our culture is now available to so many more. The accessibility is, I truly believe, undeniable. And so what as I said earlier, the diaspora is there, the technology is there. There are interested folks across the board who, in our own way, promote what we think is, I find the beauty of our backgrounds in. So more power to it. When technology, Hinduism, again, as you said, is something that is an embracer, is an enabler of a person to go through life in a realistic manner, and so this appeals to people and has for decades.
Right.
The Beatles, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but now...
And we didn't take advantage of those opportunities, as I always say. You get a moment in time in life, you don't take, you miss the wave. To use the surface language, you miss the wave. So talking to you about this, I recall my favorite actress, Julia Roberts, did a movie called Eat, Pray, Love in India. She stayed in India for a couple of months. When she came back, she said that I'm embracing the Hindu way of life. And there was immediately an uproar that how can a Catholic become a Hindu? And when she explained that I don't have to give up my religion, then things quietened down. Now, taking that part of the example, talking about the Shakti part of it, how would your foundation, what is your brainchild in this? That how the most aggressive feminine population in the world, where they are demanding, and rightfully so, an equality which I don't understand, is that why must women seek equality with men because they are so much more talented in more ways than one? So, the things that women do, men can never do. So the question is equality a meaningless war or desire? And at the same time, how would you take the Shakti message, the message of Shakti? Because Shakti, as we talked yesterday on the phone, it doesn't grow on trees. It is right within, right? So the question is, how would you impart that education to the population here, to the women here, whether they are of any country, any religion, any faith?
Funny that you mentioned that, because that is exactly how, like the first phrasing of your sentence, which is that we are not harnessing it enough. Part of the reason why I started this foundation in the first place is that, as you said, when you moved to America, you became a better Hindu. And unsurprisingly, that's the same thing that happened with me, because I came here and two things happened. First, in India, when you're growing up as a majority, because Hinduism is the majority religion, the political environment is such that somehow you end up thinking that the onus of secularism not only lies with the majority, which is partly true, but also that you have to hide your Hindu-ness in order to appear more secular. And so we just get into a unsaid habit of hiding our Hindu-ness. When I came to America, I realized that there are parts of my identity that I can't just hide in the typical way of assimilating, because I look the way I look and I dress the way I dress, and no matter how many accents I acquire and no matter how many things I change, I will still be wearing my Indianness on my face. And then I looked around and I saw these people of extremely diverse people, all kinds of races, all kinds of religions, and they're embracing their identity. And I think this is a very relatively recent thing in America, but it was the first thing that I noticed here. And then I suddenly started easing myself into my own identity, and it was a process. And once I did that, I realized I don't have to hide it, I don't have to hide my chudi slightly into my sleeve, I don't have to part my hair in a way so that my sindoor is not visible. When people look at me, they appreciate these things, they ask me about it, and I get an opportunity to explain my culture. And oftentimes I realize that as part of explaining my culture is how I end up looking up my culture, because there are a lot of things I never bothered to learn. So when I went into looking up, and I speak English and Hindi, and I read both fluently, I realized that there is a fundamental distinction about in the content that is available in English and what is available in Hindi. And I'm reading these feminist documents because, as I said, I'm interested in feminism, and from a Hindu perspective, and I'm reading it and I'm like, this is alien information, this is not connecting to me at all. What are you even talking about? This is not my dharma. And I may know at that point I was not a very overtly religious person, average middle class person who does her pujas in the way prescribed and so on and so forth. So I was nowhere a scripture expert, but I realized this is not it. So I decided that it is time that we change the name of the game. If we are not going to write about Hinduism, nobody else is going to do it. And as a result, we have left that vacuum. As you said, we have never used it. We have never bothered to explain to the world. And part of that, I feel, is because Hindu Dharma is a individual journey. So it sends you on a journey within. As a result, you don't even bother to tell others what's happening. I think that's a fundamental distinction philosophically. But I realize we still need to balance it out, because there are hundreds and thousands of and millions of girls like me who are trying to read about their dharma in the mediums they understand, in languages they understand, in taxonomy they understand, and they're just not getting the material. As a result, they either leave their questions behind, or
I will just interject here, because you said because there is a website formed, but I don't remember the name correctly because it just was sent to me a few days ago, in which it is a Wikipedia kind of a thing, Hindupedia, and where all aspects of Hinduism has been described rather well. And I read it, and it is bereft of the Western definition of who we are, which is what is essential. Now, you are a film director. Indians are very poor in creating the narrative and
Correct.
establishing the formula. We are very poor in that. We may have all the knowledge, as I take the cue from Peter Sellers' movie The Party, in which he makes a fool of himself at a Hollywood party, and a classic simple Indian. And when he is told, "Who the hell do you think you are?" at one point in time, the host gets very irritated. He says, "We Indians don't think, we know who we are." So that remains a quintessential individual journey of every Hindu. We are not organized. Your thoughts?
Again, agreed in hearing various perspectives from both continents, being raised in North America and of South Asian descent. And I would say that it reverts back to, for me, is those two components I see. One is, again, we're a very diverse group of people. Again, not a formation of more of a diaspora. And one also that people are quite comfortable, Hindus are quite comfortable in what, in fact, even in the complete degree of what you are trying to achieve in life is a sense of peace and of fulfillment, actualization. And so there is not always this constant push. And there is not this concerted effort by many individuals or organizations. Take a group such as Judaism and the Jewish people, both in Israel as well as America. And as well in the entertainment industry, there's so much storytelling that's revered by and made by people like a Steven Spielberg or someone who wanted to celebrate their culture, and guess what? That's enjoyed by many more that are in that culture, and by many others. But that same effect has not happened in filmmaking. We have had it very much, and I must state it, in Bollywood. I mean, one of the best quotes I ever heard from George Clooney was, he looks at Bollywood and was so impressed as it really was the golden era of what Hollywood was. But what India now needs, and I champion from Voyager, from North America as well as South Asian, is this independent fiction, independent filmmaking and storytelling, which needs to emerge a lot more on the scene. And that will cover much of the storytelling that we find in our sacred texts. They just haven't been pulled and expressed into new media.
But that's a very important point you raised here. The thing is that if you are not telling your story, like Steven Spielberg did, or so many others who tell their story, the story of the Second World War is only from the prism of Hollywood. The Germans are made to look stupid. Yeah, they may have been in war-like situations in which, whether it's a fortune or a tactical or a strategic part, you won the war. But in the movies, Germans look as if they had no ideas or they had run out of ideas. So there is a depiction, there is a storytelling of that.
Narrative, right?
Narrative. Now that's what is important. I believe that we Hindus have never created our narrative. So Bollywood, for example, I mean, look at it this way. As much as I love Hindi movies, but they virtually import dialogues, names, and everything from Hollywood. There is a virtual repetition. Of course, now there are many movies being made which are different. But talking about that, we will come back after this short break. But in that break, we will talk about the institution building and a point that you raised very importantly, that we are all individuals. Where is the collective Hindu? We'll talk about that right after this break. Welcome back. I have been enjoying this conversation, and I hope you are too. But here is one thing that I wanted to definitely touch upon, is which Hitesh mentioned about, that we Hindus are very individualistic, and we seek individual peace and calm in our life through our way, whatever it is. But however, as the saying goes, if you are surrounded by 156 Christian countries, if you're surrounded by 65 Islamic countries, and you are one big Hindu country with 1.2 billion population, and you call yourself secular, the question is secularism a myopic, utopian idea, or is it just a political relish? That's an important question that we need to address. And to that end, it is very important to understand and recognize that if we are not able to confront the onslaught of the organized religion, we probably may vanish. Great civilizations have disappeared. Are we on that brink? Remember, politically speaking, think about it. Countries like Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, USSR, and many more have vanished. If we do not protect ourselves, are we going to suffer the same fate? And I'm looking at it from a very different point of view, and my point of view is very strong from my perspective, and that is, I feel that even in India, Hindus are on constant attack. And Sabrimala temple is one such example. It had nothing to do with gender discrimination. If it was gender discrimination, girls below 10 and women over 50 will also not be allowed. But they are allowed. So it's not gender issue. It has a particular physiological and biological issue, which is also related to the concept of celibacy, which is much different than brahmacharya, which is an ardent practice in Hindu philosophy. It's not an evil thing. So I was very disturbed with Sabrimala onslaught that happened by the communist government, because I have been to Sabrimala in 1977. That's where this beard grew, as a matter of fact. And that has stayed on since 1977. So the point of the matter is that I notice that even the educated people are taking this matter as a gender discrimination. So Nari Shakti, Nehaji, tell me something about it from your perspective, what you know. Is this onslaught on Sabrimala one isolated incident, or it is a concerted attack? And I believe after Sabrimala, it will be Varanasi.
Absolutely, and thank you for mentioning that. Interestingly, Shaktitva came into existence after I participated, formally came into existence after I participated in the 2016 social media campaign called Ready to Wait. And that Ready to Wait was, in my opinion, a turning point in the Sabrimala discussion, because not only did women from all walks of life, all parts of India, all classes, from poor people, poor women to rich women, barring all of those criterias, we came to the front and we spoke our truth, which was that we should not be made to choose between our rights and our faith. What is happening in feminism right now, and the way the issue has been malformed about Sabrimala, is that if you are a Hindu woman, you are given absolutely no space in the larger scheme of things, because thousands upon thousands upon thousands of women marched across the streets of Kerala speaking that they do not want to enter the temple, that the government and the constitution should stop interfering in the traditions. This has nothing to do with menstruation. This has absolutely nothing to do with any kind of discrimination. You know, there are thousands of temples across the world. If you're not allowed in one temple, you're allowed in another. There is a Kamakhya Devi temple where men are not allowed. And yet we were speaking this truth, and we were completely being blacked out by the mainstream media. So we took placards and stood up in social media campaigns, at which point it became the thing trended for many days at a stretch. So we got some news coverage, but again we got blacked out after it. So we realized this is not helping, and then we looked up the arguments that were presented in the court. Until then, didn't help. So we actually formed another organization called People for Dharma, and 3 fantastic women, Anjali George, Padma Pillai and Shilpa Nair, they got together and created this People for Dharma organization. We petitioned the court to make us a party in the PIL. We got approval, and we made the arguments in front of the Supreme Court. Now, interestingly, out of the 5-bench panel, in which there was only one woman, the female judge agreed with us. The female judge said it is not discrimination, and the male judges thought this was discrimination. If this is not funny, I don't like it. I just always find it extremely ironic. So the female woman understood that all differentiation is not discrimination. You know, I have parts of my body that men don't have, therefore I will need different things than they will do, and just because we have a differentiation in that perspective does not mean it's all discrimination. We can't just, we can't extend this argument beyond even the Sabrimala, and yet the extremely fantastical stories are being created that it has something to do with menstruation and impurity and all of that bunkum. Truth is that Ayyappa has 4 major temples in Kerala, only in which one of them he's sitting in Naishthik Brahmacharya, which is an extreme version of Brahmachari, where he refrains from the company of women. So as respect to that vow that he took, the female devotees in fertile age do not enter the temples to respect his vow. And it is noteworthy here that a temple for Hindus is not a place to simply pray like a mosque or a church. That is not what a temple is. You go to a temple to get darshana, which means we believe that the deity is in a living form residing in that temple. So by visiting that temple, it's like meeting a friend or meeting your father or something of that sort. So you're actually going to meet him in his house, and in order to show that you're worthy of that meeting, you do a very hard 41-day vratam. Now, aside from the fact that women cannot do that 41-day vratam because you'll have menstruation in the middle, that's the only connection to the menstruation aspect of it. The rest of it is just simply the fact that even if I was a vegetarian,
we will have to cut that. You said it very correctly. That's an important part to understand, that in the Hindu philosophy there is a temple for every purpose. You go to Gita temple for Gita prayer. You go to Lakshmi, you pray to Lakshmi when you want money. Now this brings me to another topic which is also bedeviling India more so. You mentioned the name Anjali George. Mm-hmm. Obviously, at some point in time, whether marriage or conversion, she has become a Christian, has adopted a Christian name.
No, she was born a Christian.
She was born a Christian, whatever. But conversion as a religious move is very rampant in India. Missionaries go under one garb or the other, and they indulge in conversion. What is called corruption. Conversion in my mind is a corruption, and what I prefer to call
Freudian
is
slip.
Really, really an insult to God's original intent. Because I believe that if God is the real creator of all of us, if other than evolution as a process, if God is the creator and if he wanted me anything else than what I am, he could have done it like this, right? So God's original intent was that I am a Hindu. God's original intent was somebody is Muhammad or somebody is Christian. Conversion is an insult to God's original wish, and I therefore call it as a sin. You are married to an Italian who is an Haitian. Have you ever come across that conflict? And if conversion as an instrument of societal and religious change should be banned in India, not in terms of religious freedom, but as a social practice, protecting the religion at the same time.
Well, I would say that
As a film director, I would
Mhm.
say,
Well, I'll
go
state it-
ahead and think through your processes and multiple
No, I
frames
get-
you can look at.
I appreciate the question. It's come up. I'll first address it personally, most and foremost, because I am, we are human beings. And I think the first point brought up earlier of differentiation versus discrimination has some application here, in that that's one of the strengths of Hinduism, is that it doesn't necessarily look to other definitions, other people, other religions. It's defining in itself. While in some cases and experiences I've had, in Christianity particularly as well, there's a fundamental to it of the original sin, that's built within the essence of that religion, and how much one decides that they are of original sin essentially is the walk of life of a Christian. It can come in many forms, as it does in many different branches, degrees, devout, not. The level of what you're bringing up also, well, others need to be as well. If I've sinned, was born in sin, and now I'm not, I need to help all these other people, i.e. conversion. So there's many degrees of it. There's even obviously the most basic one of, I believe I was born in sin and now I follow this path and I'm happy with it and I don't care what anyone else does. So generally speaking, there are the same level of variances of degree to religions, but I would state that I can't really attest to what's happening in the current state of affairs in India, but yeah, here in the States, I believe that seeing it from the side of someone like Neha, who's new to the States, it's a minority here. So meaning Hinduism, how it exists amongst the dominant Christian faith, as well as Judaism and Islam. And so all I can state is that I believe that within it, I think you are correct in that there is a path for all of us, and if God has decided...
You said it very correctly. There is a path for all of us, and
Yeah.
I have shared this with my Christian and Muslim friends, that I strongly believe that our Sanatan Dharma in Hinduism is the only truly democratic, liberal process on the planet Earth. I have no objection or no unhappiness if Christians believe in Jesus is the only way, and that's what gets the best out of you. I'm happy. I'm very happy if you believe Allah is supreme. Good for you. Do pray. Do follow His path. But don't tell me I'm wrong. That's what you were
Correct.
referring to. Don't tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's similar to what...
That is the point which we as a Hindus, while we are individually on the path in an individual conversation, collectively we have not created that structure of building that narrative and the story.
Mhm.
That's the point which I strongly believe, and I'm on this TV, I'm offering you today, Nehaji, whenever you have a conference or you want to address, if you want a male point of view of Hinduism, I'll be happy to come and join you.
Absolutely.
And that's a point which is very important. And the other one quick thing that I want to ask both of you and give a quick response to that, we are running out of time, is that do you think that it is fashionable amongst Hindus in India to be overly critical of things Hindu? Like many women do that. I mean, the criticism of Hindus from within is so rampant. I don't see that criticism, self-criticism by other religious followers of their faith. So are we becoming unfair with ourselves? One line.
I would say it's swinging. It's a pendulum. And there will be moments when embracing Hinduism, showing your individualism as well as faith are going to be actually more powerful than people realize.
Nehaji, what about you?
Absolutely. I agree with what you just said, and I think the fundamental reason is a bit of like a twofold thing. A, we have insecurities, which we have because of the way our past was, and also we are now taking Western frameworks and trying to fit ourselves into it, and as a result we're not going to fit, and so we'll find and with a half-baked knowledge of our dharma being fit into Western frameworks which are not comparable, we are ending up into this quagmire which you just explained.
Well, we have run out of time. As the saying goes, every segment of life has to come to an end. Today's discussions come to an end today at this point in time. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you, Hitesh, for joining us today on a very cold day, and Nehaji for traveling all the way from New Jersey to be with us. Much appreciated. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend and see you again next week.